So, into our talk tonight, we have been looking at the 50 characteristics of complex trauma. And if you're here for the first time, research over the last 10 years has pointed to the reality that 97% of people with addiction problems have a common characteristic of having childhood trauma. And it's not just a one-time event. It's that they grew up not feeling safe. So stuff in the home caused them to have to be on guard, walking on eggshells. And as a result of that, they went into fight-flight mode. And if they're too little to fight back or too little to flee, run away, they froze. They shut everything down. And then once they got old enough to find drugs and alcohol, they found the perfect way to fight, flight, and freeze. And so they become addicts. So that's why such a high percentage of addicts have the common childhood characteristic of complex trauma, or it's now being referred to as complex PTSD. And so what comes out of complex PTSD is 50 different characteristics. Only one of the characteristics is addiction. There's 49 others. And what we've been trying to make clear is that if you're going to deal with your addiction, you can't just deal with the one symptom of complex trauma. You got to deal with all the symptoms and get healthy in the rest of your life. And so we've been working our way through the symptoms of complex trauma. Tonight we're going to do just two. And the one that we're going to do is a really, really big one. And I hope it gives you some insight into your life. But to set it up, I want to start by talking about two chemicals that are released in the brain when you sense danger. So when danger is triggered inside of you, fear kicks in, your brain releases two chemicals. Last week I talked about one of them, which is cortisol, and that's going to be the one we focus on tonight. And it's really important to understand this cortisol. So cortisol, it does a couple things when it's released in your brain. So you have to imagine yourself in a traumatic event. Cortisol is released, and what starts pumping? Adrenaline. And what does adrenaline do? It gives you energy to fight or flight. You can fight harder, and you can hit harder, or you can run faster than anybody else. So cortisol is a protective chemical. When you're in danger, it fires off adrenaline to give you that energy to fight or flight. It does a second thing. It burns the memory of that event into your brain. So I ask clients all the time, who can remember where they were 9/11, 2001? Basically, everybody puts up their hands. They can remember where they were standing when they saw the two jets fly in to the World Trade Center buildings. Why is that? Because cortisol was released. You said that's a world-changing event. That means us in the Western Hemisphere are potentially not safe anymore from terrorists, so it gets burned into your brain. Can't remember what you did the day before or the day after, but you remember that event. Now, the design of the brain is to release cortisol in a one-time danger event. It gives you energy to fight or flight so that then you get safe again. Cortisol stops pumping. The memory is there saying if you ever get close to this type of event again, run before you get hurt. And then you go back to normal. The brain wasn't designed for ongoing trauma or complex trauma. Because what happens with complex trauma is cortisol is being released constantly into your brain. And what that does is it begins to damage your brain. And it's so important to understand that in healing from complex trauma and dealing with your addiction. So originally, you get fight, flight happening all the time. You get adrenaline happening to give you energy to fight, flight. but it does something in the brain that affects your memory. So your brain, when you experience an event, it stores the details and the emotions of that event in two separate parts of your brain. One in the left hemisphere, one in the right hemisphere. In the one part, it records the details. So let's say you went to the Jets game, the whiteout. So you were there, you can remember where you're standing when the goal was scored, all of that stuff, the details, one part of your brain. Other part, the emotions. You can remember how excited you got when they scored, when they won, all of those things. Then what happens when either the details get triggered or the emotions get triggered, there's a little bridge between the two hemispheres of your brain that connects the two parts, the details and the emotions, and you have a full memory of that event. When cortisol is released all the time, it burns that bridge. And so what happens then is people with complex trauma have memory gaps. That's number 8 characteristic of complex trauma. And people that I deal with, they will have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even more years where they don't remember a thing. It's a blank. That's because the bridge was burned. Now, what people say to me goes like this. Why do I need to remember anything? It's in the past. It doesn't affect me. And I go, just a minute. You don't remember the details, but your body and your brain remember the emotions. So if you were to go into the North End, let's say, and you went by a street where you were jacked, but you have no memory of that, all of a sudden you're vibrating and you're panicking and you just, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. What's happening? Your brain's remembering the emotions, you just don't have the details. And so you're getting triggered and you're going into fight flight not knowing why. And that can be, if you don't deal with that, you can get triggered and you just go relapse and you don't know why you relapsed. So once you get in a safe place and you're starting to work on stuff, cortisol stops pumping when you're in a safe place. That bridge starts to heal. And then you start to get flashbacks. You start to get memories coming back. That leads to a little bit of dilemma. I have clients all the time say to me, I want to remember, but I'm afraid to remember. I want to remember what happened in those years, but I don't know if I want to go there. It might be too painful. And what I say to clients is this. If you're in a safe place so that your brain could heal, you're also in a place then where you can be supported as you remember. It's like the brain knows when you're healthy enough to start dealing with the memories it had to block. And that is what cortisol does. Now, there's a second chemical that is released in the brain, and most of you will relate to this. Let me say one other thing about cortisol and adrenaline. I think one of the results of complex trauma is you get so much cortisol and adrenaline, your brain begins to need it to feel normal. Or another way to say that is you become addicted to cortisol and adrenaline. And so that's one of the reasons people create chaos, is to get the adrenaline pumping because their brain needs it. Okay, next chemical, oxytocin. It is the love drug. It is the chemical that makes you feel in love and makes you feel connected to somebody. The purpose in trauma is this. When oxytocin is released in the brain of a child, they want to run for a hug. They want to connect with mom or dad. When a child is in danger, oxytocin is also released in mom or dad, and they want to run to comfort and protect and nurture that scared child. So oxytocin drives you to a safe support system. That's the design. Complex trauma messes a lot of that up. But before I get into that, give you the other times when oxytocin is released. It is released in huge quantities in women primarily, and that's because they do two very painful things that I am told that we as men don't appreciate. They have babies and they go through delivery. Now, when you're a lady's in labor, the brain is just gushing oxytocin. And oxytocin, it kind of numbs some of the pain, but it has another effect. Just think of this. If a woman didn't have any oxytocin at all, and she went through labor and delivery, and she had her insides ripped apart, what would happen when that baby came out? She'd grab a knife and kill it, because it just put her through hell. But oxytocin, what does it do inside of that mom? She has a baby, she's screaming, she's crying, she's mad at her husband, at the doctors, at the world. As soon as that baby's out, oh, I love you, I love you. She wants to connect. It's love. That's oxytocin. It's a beautiful chemical. And then it's released when a woman is nursing. So I am just told this, I don't know it from experience, but when a baby latches on to the mom's nipple, it hurts. And what does the mom do? Oh, I'm connecting with you, I'm bonding, and it's a beautiful experience. That's oxytocin. So that's the design to form that emotional connection. Then it is released in men and women when you hug somebody or you kiss somebody, it is released, or when you have sex. Now, let me tell you how complex trauma messes all of this up. You might have, as a child, been in danger and you ran to mom and you got smacked and told, grow up, quit being such a wimp. What just happened there is your oxytocin system wasn't able to fulfill itself. It got stopped. It got smashed. And so that longing to connect, you had to shove down, because you would get punished if you showed the weakness of wanting to connect. So guess what happens to many people once they get into their teens and they have sex for the first time? Oxytocin is released, and the person you're with is saying, I love you, I love you. You go, oh, I found, finally. I have found what I've been looking for, love and acceptance. Guess what you just became an addict to? Oxytocin. So now you go looking for love when really it's a chemical in your brain that is released when you get a hug or have sex. And you feel in love because that's what oxytocin does. And so many people from complex trauma develop a relationship addiction or a sex addiction. And what their brain thinks is, I need sex. No, what you really need is connection. You are longing for that safe, intimate relationship where you can be totally open and connect at a deep emotional level. But the wires got crossed in your teens, and your brain says, I want more oxytocin, so I always need a relationship or I need lots of sex. And that gets a lot of people messed up. And what I would say to most addicts is this: drugs, alcohol might be your primary, in your mind, your primary addiction. My guess is that probably it's relationship or sex that's even deeper than your drugs and alcohol. We'll talk about that a lot more in the future. Now let me go back to oxytocin and characteristic number 9, anger issues. I have a lot of people that say to me, my problem is just the drugs. If I could stop using, my life would be perfect. And they stop using, and lo and behold, their life isn't perfect. And guess what they find is damaging their relationships, damaging their children that they have great guilt and remorse about? It's their anger. Cortisol is released when you're angry. Cortisol is what intensifies the anger emotion, and it makes it one of the most powerful emotions and hardest to control. That's cortisol at work. And so anger gives you energy to fight. Anger gives you energy to flee. Cortisol is part of that. Now, a lot of people or most people from complex trauma, I could probably say all people from complex trauma have anger issues. Now, what I have found is this. Most remember being angry for as long as they can remember. As far as they can think back in their memories, they always felt an anger inside. They just aren't sure why. What caused all of that anger? Then, for many people, when they're angry in recovery, it triggers relapses very quickly. So I'm mad at you, I'll show you, I'll get drunk at you. That's an anger relapse. I'll punish you by punishing myself or by relapsing. Many people from complex trauma are afraid of their anger. And so they try to keep it under control. They're afraid if they ever just let it go, they'd be afraid of what they do. They're afraid they go into a black rage. They just totally black out. And it's a scary emotion for them. Causes lots of guilt, and it's done a lot of damage. And so anger becomes an important thing for people to face in recovery and to just get healthy. But what makes it so difficult is this. If anger gets triggered in you, you go from 0 to 100 in a nanosecond. That's cortisol. And trying to stop that nanosecond 0 to 100 and to stop you from going there is super, super difficult. And that is what makes the anger issue so difficult to deal with, but so important to deal with. So there are two types of anger. Now, why this is important is this. When I teach anger, our week on anger at React, I usually ask the clients, how many have been to an anger management course? And most of them put their hand up. And I go, how helpful was it? Wasn't helpful at all. And the reason is this. Most anger management courses don't deal with the complex trauma. They deal with anger from a person who doesn't have complex trauma. So if you say to a person who's grown up in a healthy home and has a few anger flare-ups, you should just count to 10. They can do that. Say count to 10 to a complex trauma person, they're going, you crazy? I got a nanosecond. I can't count to 10 in a nanosecond. It doesn't work. And so the tools that might work for somebody from a healthy home don't work for somebody from complex trauma. So there's two types of anger. So I like to use a volcano illustration. There's the lava underneath. That's the complex trauma anger that's been there for as long as you can remember, just bubbling away below the surface. Then there's the eruption. That's when you get triggered and you explode. That's when the anger comes out. Okay? So we're going to come back to the lava particularly, because for people from complex trauma, if they don't deal with the lava, they'll never get their anger under control. But I got to answer a question first. First couple of times I ever taught anger, I said, who has anger issues? And only about one person in the class would put their hand up. And I go, what? I know they all got anger issues. And here's what I learned. They thought that the only people with anger issues are the people that explode and throw things and yell and hit things. They go, that person's got an anger problem. I don't do that, so I don't have an anger problem. So I had to get smarter, okay? So here's 3 other types of anger. So number 1, the explosion. Second, What happens in complex trauma is you stuff your anger. Because if you showed your anger, you got punished. So you had to stuff it down. So a lot of people today say, I don't have anger problems. What they're really saying is, I stuff it. Meanwhile, I can't sleep, I got ulcers, I got high blood pressure, but I don't got anger problems. You just stuff it. Then, third group is anger turned on yourself. So if somebody's upset, you go, it must be my fault. So let's beat myself up. So you tell yourself nasty things. Some people go to self-harm, to hurt themselves, to punish themselves. But you turn your anger on yourself. And then fourth, some are really sneaky with their anger. So let me give you an example. You come home from work, your partner says, how was your day? You say, fine. You sound like something's bothering you. Anything bother you? Nope. Do you want to talk about it? Nope. So what you've done there is you pissed them off. Because they know something's bugging you, but you're not going to talk about it or get honest about it. So they start getting frustrated with you, and what do? You got anger problems. You should get your anger looked at. So you're so sneaky about your anger that you can hurt other people and not look like you're hurting people. How many of you have used sarcasm? So what is that? I'll take a shot at you, but I'll put it in a joke. And then if you go, ooh, that kind of hurt. Did you mean that? No, I was just joking. Meanwhile, you're going, oh boy, they got it. Success. Now, if my wife wants to hurt me, I have a big thing in my life called punctuality. You know what she can do? Show up 10 minutes late and say, oh, the traffic was terrible. Meanwhile, she's just sitting downstairs waiting for me to get frustrated. That's what we call underhanded anger. I will push your buttons. I will give you the silent treatment. I will pout. And I'm going to hurt you, but I won't show it. If you try to challenge me that I'm angry, I will deny it. Because there's no outward, visible explosions happening. Now, here's what happens for many people from complex trauma. You develop patterns. So a lot of you, when something's bugging you, you will begin by stuffing it. And then after it builds in pressure inside of you, you'll start going underhanded. You'll be sarcastic. You'll push buttons. You'll take little shots. And then if it keeps building, then you'll explode. And so you develop your own style for expressing anger. Now, I've had many people, after I've taught on anger, come to me after the talk and say, now I'm angry at you. Because you just showed me I had anger problems. And I go, good, I can take your anger. But hopefully you see that you might have some anger issues. Now let's go to the question, where did the lava come from? Okay? It's important to understand that anger, by its original design, was designed to be a very good emotion, a very helpful emotion. It was designed to react whenever anything happened. Whenever anything happened that violated love. So think of that. If somebody lies to you, that's a violation of love. So what do you experience if somebody lies to you? Anger. What's the purpose of the anger? It's to give you the energy and the motivation to say, hey, that's not good for a relationship. If we keep lying to each other, we're going to destroy our relationship. That's unhealthy. I want to keep it healthy. So anger was designed to motivate you to bring a relationship out of unhealthy back into healthy. What happens if somebody does something that's not fair? You get angry. What are the young children's famous words? That's not fair. And they stomp their feet. Why? Anger saying, let's keep it fair. If it's not just, it violates love. If somebody cheats on you, that violates love. All of those things you should get angry about because they're hurting you, your partner, your relationship, your children. And so anger was designed to bring stuff back into healthy, loving relationship. Now, complex trauma. Was there lots of lies told? Yes. Was there lots of injustice? Yes. Was there lots of hurting each other? Yes. Was there lots of disrespect? Yes. Did you get angry? Yes. What happened when you got angry? You got punished for it. And so anger's design is, this situation isn't right, I will resolve it, then the anger disappears. But for a child, lots was happening that was violating love. You got angry, but it couldn't be resolved. You got hurt and punished, so what was your only option? Stuff it. Stuff anger down. Never show it. Guess what happens after years of stuffing your anger? You got lava in a volcano. And now, what are your main triggers to the eruption of anger? Anything that violates love. If somebody lies to you, cheats on you, disrespects you, injustice, explosion. Now it comes out. So that is what you have to deal with. Okay, what then happens as you get older is you begin to realize, you know what? Anger serves other purposes. Now this is where we go into unhealthy. So we have given up on healthy anger. Now we begin to think, I can use anger as either a weapon or a shield. And I can use it to hurt people or protect myself. And so for many people, if I am angry, I can control people close to me. Because they go, don't get angry, do whatever you want, just don't get angry. And so you learn anger is a way to control people. And then a lot of people like to be angry because if they're angry, they don't feel other emotions. They don't feel pain. They don't feel sadness. So anger actually becomes a medication, a drug, so I don't have to feel other things. And I've dealt with many clients who, when they wake up in the morning, they get themselves angry. That way they don't feel. And another reason for that is it gives energy. So when you're angry, you got energy because you got cortisol and adrenaline happening. For others, I like getting angry because I can hurt you then. I can hurt you badly when I'm angry. Many people say, I don't want to be angry anymore. I'm tired of being angry. It's doing so much damage. But then they decide to stop being angry and a new thing happens. They get afraid because they go, anger kept me on guard. Anger gave me an edge. If I let go of my anger, I might relax too much and then I might get hurt. And so that is something that you will have to face. And then many complex trauma homes, people don't respect each other's boundaries. So you put a big sign on your door saying, keep out. Mom and dad just walk through your door with no respect for your boundary. So what children struggle with in complex trauma is, how do I get some space? How do I get some alone time? How do I get people to respect my boundary and stay away? Two options: isolate or blow up. If I isolate, then I just take myself away. If I blow up, I drive everybody away. Great for making a boundary. Now, there's a problem with the anger. What usually happens is you drive everybody away through an anger outburst, then you feel guilty. And then you go, okay, come all back in. I'm so sorry I blew up. And you take all the boundaries down, and you let them use you, walk all over you, take advantage of you, and anger starts to build again, and then you drive them all away. And it's a bit like a yo-yo after a while. And then others need to be angry in order to blame everybody else for their decisions. So I don't take ownership for my stuff the way I should. Now, the danger with anger that isn't dealt with, that is never resolved, is it kind of goes sour inside of you. And it becomes a resentment. And it just becomes a huge issue. And once anger is unresolved and turns into a resentment, so if you have a resentment towards somebody and you look at them, you only think of negative about them. If they did something really nice, you would go, that's not their real motive was they wanted a pat on the back. So once you have a resentment, you could have the nicest person in the world, but you would find nothing but fault with them. That, if you don't deal with it, just keeps anger alive. And it becomes a bigger and bigger problem.